to try your luck, and while you're here, sign up on our amazing Players Club. New players sign up and get your first 5 on us. We have exciting rewards happening daily for our players, such as Lassie and Lads Day, Spin the Wheel, and Balloon Pop. And don't miss Happy Hour Thursdays. It's a 500-point clock-in from 5 to 7. We have the friendliest attendants in town, and our complimentary soups and beverages are always served up with a smile. The Emerald Casino at the Stone, just a stone's throw away off I-90 and Reserve.
Hey, David again with Garden City Plumbing and Heating. Did you know there are proactive steps you can take to ensure your drains aren't a source of frustration this holiday season? Proactive Drain Cleaning utilizes water jet technology to thoroughly clean the walls of your drains, getting rid of grease, grime, and buildup from years of use. Now, through December 24th, we're offering $50 off of drain cleaning services. Don't wait until a clog occurs or this offer expires to take advantage. Contact one of our drain technicians today at 728-5550.
Missoula's evolution of professional baseball has landed. Welcome, the Missoula Paddleheads. After 21 seasons, Missoula's Pioneer League team has a new name and new look, but the spirit remains the same. Show support for your hometown team with Missoula Paddleheads gear. Now available at their Southgate Mall kiosk near the Clock Tower. Open 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday at the MSO Hub at 140 North Higgins and online at gopaddleheads.com.
America's best-selling off-road brand. During the Polaris Great American Thank You event, finance low at 2.99%, rebates go as high as $3,500. Live life wide open, high-performance racing, tackle everything, mountains to mud, a legendary sports and ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger or elevate your adventure with the versatile Polaris General. Now is the time to get the best deals on America's best-selling off-road lineup with financing as low as 2.99%, APR for 36 months, and rebates up to $3,500 during the Polaris Great American Thank You at Church Polaris, 2904 West Broadway, Highway in Sealy. Get to Polaris on Saturday at 7 to 7, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for 7 8 snow day. Sales is 1 day only, Saturday at 7 to 7. Rebate valid in U.S. for 12 and 1 night. Subject to credit approval, offers vary by model. Always wear a helmet, never.
In the Army National Guard, family means everything.
Our parents, they were really supportive that all 5 of us would join. I got my education because of the Guard. I got to travel a little bit and experience a whole different culture. It helped me get my job, helped me pay for my house.
Serving part-time in the Army National Guard instills pride that you and your family will share. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn more about part-time service. Sponsored by the Louisiana Army National Guard, aired by the Louisiana Broadcast. This station.
Local Missoulian Hokato Eastman is in urgent need of a new automated wheelchair. His current chair is very old and causing life-threatening pressure sores. Hokato's dream chair would allow him to be more independent and to stand for the first time in 20 years. Please help Hokato gain dignity, health, and quality of life. We hope that you sincerely consider giving money to this worthy and essential life-saving cause. Stop by the Hope Center or find his GoFundMe campaign at thehopecenter.us/wheelchair to donate. Let's get Hokato this chair, Montana.
Americans waste 3.8 million gallons of idling every single day. Idling for more than 10 seconds actually uses more fuel and produces more emissions than stopping and restarting. So next time you're stopped for more than 10 seconds at the train, getting coffee, or picking your child up from school, please turn your vehicle off.
FM on K275BS Missoula. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX television.
I like football!
Now, the 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tootell and Coulter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. Round 2 of the SCS playoff. against the numbers. We bring it to you. Albany quarterback Jeff Undercuffler and former Grizz head coach Mick Delaney. All of it in the big show today. Great to be with you. It is Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio and across the state on SWX Montana Television. Thank you for letting us be with you here on this fine Wednesday afternoon. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. Go there Saturday. 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., even a little earlier if you need to be, especially for the game. You get in there, it is their snow day. 7th annual. It is the biggest sale of the entire year. One day only at Kurtz Polaris. If you'd like to find us on the World Wide Web, you can do that, 1029ESPN.com. You just type it into your little device, computers, etc. You find our Listen Live tab there on the website. You listen live thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you'd like to call, you can do that as well, 329-1899, the phone number. All guests join us via the Rangitsch Brothers RV phone line. We got a bunch of stuff for you in the show today. We're going to start off giving you, some numerology from all of the games, particularly the games involving Big Sky Conference teams in round 2 of the FCS playoffs. Montana State hosting southeastern Louisiana and Albany, respectively. But Weber State getting Kennesaw State, who is just a 2-loss team on the season, and then Austin Peay, who beat down, was it Furman, Coulter, that Austin Peay hammered this last week?
Indeed.
Like 42-6. It's a shocking result in that football game, and at least in terms of the spread. I mean, unbelievable. They are at Sacramento State. So there's the 4 games we're going to get into against the spreads and sort of use those as entry points as to what we anticipate happening, what we're looking for in these games. I will give you a hint. All the home teams are favored. Okay? All the home teams are favored. We also got a Wednesday for you, so it's Wing It Wednesday. You go ahead and get yourself into a little bit of Desperado wings there from the Desperado Sports Tavern. We'll do some trivia with you thanks to them, and Coulter's got some questions. I got some questions. I got standing leaders in professional sports. Who's got the best records and worst records right now? I'll get into that. Looking forward to it. We also, here at the end of the about 45 minutes or so from now, Jeff Undercuffler. He is the redshirt freshman quarterback of the Albany Great Danes. They're taking on Montana State on Saturday, and we had a conversation with him, so we will bring that to you. We also, in the next hour, will do another Wing It Wednesday, and then our ESPN Roundtable, this time with former Grizz head coach Mick Delaney. We like Mick Delaney a lot. Well, I mean, get in line, right? Pretty likable, pretty affable guy, and still very involved in all things football around the state of Montana. Lives there in Butte, but he joins us for the ESPN Roundtable. In particular, Coulter, he was the head coach of the Grizzlies in the last really cold weather home football game, a home playoff game for Montana when they played a warm weather team, the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, which, by the way, was a loss for the Grizzlies in that game back in 2014. So we cover a bunch of ground with him, and we'll talk to him about that and a number of other things as well.
Tease for later on this week too. Joe Moglia, the former head coach at Coastal Carolina, will join us. I remember when the Grizz were hosting this game, like I said on the show yesterday, diving into the research on these teams and these institutions from long ways away, and by and large not ones that you know anything about readily. Yeah. And I knew nothing about Coastal Carolina before they came to Missoula. But then you dove into that specific story. I mean, Joe Moglia was one of the head executives at Ameritrade. And the guy is a multi-millionaire. And then he got back into college coaching later in life, but that went hand in hand with the way that Coastal Carolina ran their football program and their rapid ascension from the FCS to the FBS. And we talked with Mick Delaney about that game and sort of the preparations and things that went into that game. But also, it'll be interesting to have Joe Moglia join us later on this week, because the word unique is overused. Something has to be one of a kind to be unique. But his status as Coastal Carolina's coach at that moment, and then the rise that they went on after that, was truly unique. I mean, you had a guy with all the money in the world that just wanted to be a part of college football, and his ability to manage logistics and things like that because of his corporate background was a distinct advantage in that game, and it will be fun to rehash those memories with him later this week.
No doubt. Yeah, a very interesting and notable story and figure in football really at large. And so we'll certainly look forward to talking with him at some point. There you go. That is our show outlook and future outlook as well, brought to us by Shine Auto Detailing. Right now, save $50 this week only when you book an auto detailing with Shine Auto Detailing online at shineautodetailing.net. Coulter, let's jump into this. By the way, I want to remind everybody, the FCS Speculators podcast is going to be out here later on today, maybe early tomorrow, so we will get that for you, and you can go listen to it. And we got a bunch of great guests on there, so we'll run through who those are. But we like to look at these things against the numbers and use the numbers as an entry point to talk about the games, how competitive we expect them to be, and all of that. So let's take a look, shall we, Coulter, at the Big Sky Conference teams that are hosting games on Saturday, 4 of them, and the numbers that accompany them against their opponents. We'll start with the Montana Grizzlies, who are a 12-point favorite against Southeastern Louisiana. Southeastern Louisiana coming off of really the game of the first round, a 45-44 win over Villanova. It was a moderately controversial victory, but nonetheless an outstanding win for the Lions of Southeastern Louisiana. They come to Missoula, Coulter, and the Grizzlies having a bye, a very needed one, a needed break, both emotionally, mentally, and certainly physically for this team as well. They end up being a 12-point favorite as the 6th seed in the Big Sky Conference. What do you think about the Grizzlies as 12-point favorites against Southeastern Louisiana?
I think that some of the matchups are going to favor the Grizz. We're going to hear from Frank Selfo, the head coach of Southeastern Louisiana, a little later on this week. But listening to some of his preliminary addressing of the press and some of his media stuff, press conferences and things like that, I thought he had an interesting take on how to scout and learn about a foreign opponent, which I think that's one of the key parts of this time of year in the FCS. And I think you have a distinct advantage when you get a week off because you get to watch everyone. And you have an extra amount of time to scout them while the other team is playing. But Selfo said multiple times, the way we try to teach our team is by comparing them to players in the Southland. And he specifically mentioned in one of his press conferences, I can't remember which one, but he was comparing Dante Olson to Brennan Young, who was the Southland's leading tackler. He's a sophomore linebacker from Houston Baptist. I don't want to sound like a smart aleck, but I tell you, I guarantee you that Brennan Young is not as good as Dante Olson.
For sure.
He's not. And so,
but the comparison is just to try and draw a level of familiarity about type and what when there's no comp for a person. I mean, we do this all the time, don't we?
Yes, and I think this is what I teased yesterday that we didn't actually get to have the discussion. I think that there is a distinct element, like so many of these teams from the Southland Conference, from the Southern Conference, because of the places they recruit and the type of guys that they get and where they come from, when you just watch them on film initially, so many of these teams, they just look so good because they have guys that come from high-level football areas like Georgia and Florida and Louisiana and Texas. You got big, long, strong, fast athletes. And I think sometimes you watch the Montana film, the Montana State film, and you see guys like Josh Hill and Jace Lewis. They fit no prototype. They would likely not get recruited by any school in the country if they weren't from Montana. But they went to small schools in Montana and earned their way, and now that they're, in Jace Lewis's case, a fourth-year junior, and in Josh Hill's case, a fifth-year senior, 6'1", 205 pounds means nothing because these guys are exceptional players. I mean, Josh Hill's a first-team All-League guy. Talk about an unbelievable story. The guy's coming off of back surgery. He missed all of last year with back surgery, and he comes back this year. He's a first-team All-Conference guy. So I think that there's an element of when you're one of these teams from the Southland, you're like, well, these guys don't look nearly as athletic as the teams we've been playing on film. And then you get up to the 25,000-plus person venue with people screaming down your neck, and people are freaking out, and it's way colder than you imagine it to be, and the Hellgate winds are blowing, and all of a sudden, Jace Lewis hits you in the hole, and it's like, man, that's not what it looked like on film.
Well, it does hurt more when your pads are frozen. That much is sure. Although they won't be on Saturday. It's not going to be that cold, but
Robbie Houck is a great example.
Speaking.
Robbie Houck is a great example. What do you think that teams from the South think of Robbie Houck the first time they put him on
the same thing I think that teams from everywhere think about Robbie Houck.
And then you play against them and you're like, well, dang, He's got 12 tackles.
Right.
He runs the ball every play.
Right.
And so I guess a lot of the intangibles of heart and effort and stuff like that doesn't show up on film. And I do think that even though the Montana schools have such great tradition, a lot of times they get underestimated. And the Southeastern Louisiana team, I think, is a good team. I think they have some good players. But I think that spread is just about right on the money and maybe even a little bit low. I mean, I could see Montana winning this game by 2 scores or more.
Yeah, I do think the meta narrative, the background of this thing to me is still going to be contextualized within the scope of the Montana State game. And when you look at Southeastern Louisiana, it is a really good football team that isn't as good as Montana is in a vacuum. But also, this game isn't played in a vacuum. It's played as the next game after one of the more, first of all, objectively lopsided, and I would also say embarrassing losses in Montana in recent Montana history. And the bye week does a lot to get you away from that. The fact that you're in the playoffs for the first time in 4 years, and so all the seniors, who didn't beat Montana State over the course of their careers still have an opportunity at a measure of redemption, and I think that is certainly something they can and should spin into a positive in this thing. But we won't know until kickoff the level of effort isn't really the right word. I think that if you looked at Montana play against Weber State and then you watched them play against Montana State, you would say they had far more effort against Weber State than they had against Montana State. But that wouldn't really be accurate. I don't think anybody tried any less against Montana State than they tried against Weber. But some days you're able to...
It's the gusto.
You're able to arrive at a place that you couldn't arrive for whatever reason at the next spot. And if you can't arrive at that Saturday because of what happened a week and a half ago, that is going to be very telling in the way this game goes. But from a football standpoint, I think the minus 12 is probably valid, and especially at home and all that, you probably go to the side of the Grizzlies on that.
And we argue all the time about momentum and how big is momentum and the different sorts of momentum and the momentum within a game, particularly when you have the style that Montana plays on both sides of the ball. Getting rolling is so key, and Montana has proven that they can get rolling within the scope of a game at multiple times. 10 minutes in the game, 20 minutes in the game, after halftime. But when they do, they just annihilate people. I mean, they've gone on 28-0 runs. The opposite factor, though, is much like Weber State. Weber State had not trailed by more than 7 points in a single football game until they came to Missoula. They were down 21-3. They were in a state of disarray. They had nothing to go to. It's very similar to Montana. Montana's dug itself some holes, 17-0 against Idaho State, 10-0 against Idaho. But that was early. When the Cats just kept hammering them, Montana had really no answers. But the momentum of a game against an opponent that's never been here, I think that it's just human nature that you're going to almost inevitably underestimate almost everything you're going to face on Saturday if you're Southeastern Louisiana. Some of the biggest beatdowns I've ever seen are Southland teams coming to Missoula in the playoffs. And I expect that to be the case again. I think Montana, 9.5 is not enough for me. I'd take Montana even if it was minus 14.
Montana State, even 12 isn't enough for you.
Oh, excuse me. I was looking at the Montana State spread. But you 12 is not enough. I would say the Grizzlies are 2 touchdowns favorite.
Speaking of Montana State, let's go to the Cats hosting Albany. A 9.5 point favorite for Montana State over Albany. Here's where I'm at with this game as I've looked at it, as I've watched this Albany team, and again, we're going to have here in about a half an hour from now, we will have Jeff Undercuffler as the quarterback of Albany on the show. But here's where I'm at when it comes to Albany, Montana State. Albany is a better team than what people think that they are. Albany's a 4-loss team. One of those is to an FBS opponent. 2 of those were by 3 points, one of which was in overtime to Monmouth, who was, by the way, also in the second round of these FCS playoffs. The only game they lost the FCS level that was, a double-digit score, I think it was 11 or 14 points to Maine. Other than that, this is a team that has only won football games. I think Jeff Undercuffler has thrown for 39 touchdowns this year, set a national freshman mark for touchdown passing, and is also just sort of overlooked because they don't have the history that a lot of the other teams do in this FCS playoff, having won their first ever playoff game this past Saturday. So this is a good football team that is better than what people think. I also think it's a really bad matchup for Albany.
Horrible.
You have talked extensively about the fact that what Montana State, we all know, wants to do ultimately is run the football, and they have run it better than everybody else in the Big Sky Conference. And actually, Albany has a defense that is predicated on tackles for loss, getting after the quarterback, and actually sort of giving up running yards the way the Grizzlies give up passing yards. Looking at running yards as something like empty calories where we'll give up some to get some on the other end. But if you don't throw the ball all that much and you only want to run it, there isn't another end for that to get to. And I think Albany is in big, big trouble, not because they're not a good team, because they are, but because they do not set up well defensively when Montana State has the ball. And I can see the Cats just running all day at will.
Jeff Choate is always energetic and fired up at his Monday press conferences.
Yep.
He's always very detailed in breaking down the scheme. I thought he broke down the scheme of what Albany does, particularly on defense, in more detail than any other game that he has previewed so far this year. He talked extensively all about the post-snap movement, and that might sound like a rhetorical statement. Oh, of course, your post-snap movement, you're moving, you're getting off the ball. But what he means is they're not playing gap sound defense. They're jumping gaps.
Stunting, twisting, moving, shifting.
And like you're lining up in the A gap, for example, and then right when it's ball snap, it doesn't matter what the play is doing. You're jumping over here. And a lot of times you run head on into a tackle for loss. They get by with a 229-pound edge rusher in Eli Mentzer. They get by with the Walker kid, who's a 5'8", 268-pound defensive tackle. Those guys are incredibly quick, incredibly athletic. But they're jumping gaps. What does Montana State do? Gap scheme you to death. And if you are out of gaps, which Montana got out of gaps all day in the Cat Grizz game, 390 yards later, and that's the thing about Montana State too, especially if Troy Anderson's out. I actually think Troy Anderson's the best player on the Bobcats. He's one of the best players I've ever seen for the Bobcats. But not having him, it allows you to keep it a little bit more simple. And Montana State, they have so many tricks up their sleeve. It's not as if they just throw in a fly sweep motion for this week. They've been doing it all year. They've been doing the jet sweep stuff all year. They've been doing power, counter, and inside zone, which are their bread and butter. Outside zone. They can run it all. And now that Isaiah Ifanse is healthy, Logan Jones is healthy, now you can just run an array of ball carriers. You can, whatever Albany decides to do, Montana State's just going to be able to say, okay, we're going to go here. And I agree with you. I just think that Montana State's offensive line is so much more physically formidable. Combined with the bad matchup from a scheme perspective, I think Montana State's going to be able to run the ball at will.
And by the way, we don't know yet, right, that Troy Anderson isn't playing in this game.
Right.
He's questionable, and he's questionable. On the other side of the ball, quickly, just Coulter, this is a team that obviously likes to throw the ball. They have an outstanding wide receiver, Albany does, and obviously a very confident and good quarterback in Undercuffler. Montana State's got an outstanding defense and a really good pass rush.
They do.
For sure. I think that Albany will score some points in this game, but also I think Montana State is going to get theirs defensively too. How do you see that, just briefly?
Well, honestly, it's a bad matchup for the Cats just because their best man corner, Munchie Filer, has been out all year, and I expect that to probably be the case, although he's played in a couple games and he still could preserve his red shirt and play this game, so maybe, I'm not sure. But either way, Damian Washington's done a really good job as a zone corner. You don't want to play zone against Juwan Green because they take shots down the field. I mean, Choate said it. He said, we broke down 5 games of film, 56 downfield shots. That's about 11 a game. That's like Northern Arizona. Montana State did a good job against Northern Arizona. And that's who this offense reminds me of. I think Undercuffler is very much like Case Cook. Is throw the ball down the field. He can really spin it. That said, though, I think that Montana State will have an advantage in the trenches on this side as well. It's just going to come down to how do they mix coverages and make Undercuffler hold on to the ball just a little bit longer? Because if they can, they'll be able to get home. They just got to avoid guys like Damian Washington, Tyrell Thomas getting exploited if they get into those one-on-ones against Juwan.
Colton, let's run over to Weber State and Sac State as well. It's 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Tootell Nuanez here with you.
In case you couldn't tell by the pick, Montana State minus 12, I got that. That's what.
Montana State minus 9.5.
Oh, gosh, I keep looking. I got the lines are right over the teams.
I got you.
I got the Cats to cover.
Montana State covered 9.5. I'm with you on that. Weber State, a 12-point favorite versus Kennesaw State. It's a very intriguing matchup, man. Kennesaw State, their strength of schedule is just not as good as a lot of teams, but they are 10-2. They just came off a great win in the first round of the playoffs, and now find themselves on the road at obviously another very good team in Weber State. It's a very interesting matchup. I don't know a ton about Kennesaw State other than they're a very young FCS team in terms of only having been around for 5 years or so, but they were at the top of the FCS. I mean, within the first 2 to 3 years of being in the FCS. So this team this season at Weber State, I don't know. They're a 12-point dog on the road.
Well, Brian Bohannon, he comes from the Paul Johnson coaching tree. He was with Paul Johnson at Georgia Southern when they were FCS power. Those guys then went to Navy and Georgia Tech, so they're triple option gurus. And then Brian Bohannon started the program at Kennesaw State, and they've run the triple option with more success than anybody in the country at the FCS level, quite honestly. And you could talk about the conference not being as good and the strength of schedule not being great, but at the end of the day, 33 wins in 3 years doesn't lie. I mean, it doesn't matter who you're playing. And they've played Montana State in Bozeman a couple years back. That said, Cal Poly is always the outlier and the nightmare team in the Big Sky Conference to prepare for, even though they haven't been that good lately. Teams don't, I mean, it's an anomaly within the scope of a Big Sky schedule to prepare for. Weber State, Jay Hill has done as good a job as anybody has preparing for Cal Poly. A couple of years ago, he put Corey Thompson, his all-league fullback, at strong safety and had to run the alley. I said, you versus Joe Prothro, go. And Corey Thompson, in the one and only game he ever played defense, was the Big Sky Conference Player of the Week. Had like 20 tackles.
Pretty good. Batting 1,000 for
just said, hey, when Prothro gets the ball, go. Hit him.
Yeah.
So I expect Jay Hill to have this thing schemed up. I also think the fact is there was pictures on Twitter the other day of Ogden, a ton of snow there.
Yeah.
And as Jeff Choate said on Monday, sometimes the weather and the altitude and all that stuff is a little bit overblown. And we've seen teams from warm weather come to Montana and play well. The triple option is one style where it's not the cold, it's the wet. If the ball's wet, that's a really big disadvantage for triple option team. So I think Jay Hill will have his guys ready to go. I think Weber State's going to win that game going.
I like Weber State to win this game, but I am going to take Kennesaw State to cover for two reasons. One, regardless of the weather, I think you'd rather, of course, if the ball's wet, it's not ideal for anybody, maybe particularly a triple option team, but also if it's going to be ugly and snowing out there, it's better than being a straight passing team, in my mind. And also, Weber State is still, as far as I'm aware, pretty banged up. Like, I don't know what the now, I think defensively they're in good shape, and I agree with you. I think that Kennesaw State is going to find very tough sledding, pardon the pun, come Saturday at Weber State. But I also, I don't know how much Weber State is going to get done on offense with a couple of their big time skill guys. If available, certainly not 100%, and perhaps not available at all. So I've got Kennesaw State against, as a at plus 12 to cover that up, even though I do think Weber State wins this thing, say by 10. Sacramento State Coulter hosting Austin Peay. Austin Peay maybe the most surprising result of the first round, a 42-6 just domination of Furman, who we thought was maybe a pretty good football team, but they got it handed to them last week. Austin Peay comes from Tennessee. They got to travel across the country. It's a night kickoff, a 6 o'clock Pacific kickoff, 9 o'clock Eastern, which is where Austin, that's the time zone that Austin Peay is in. Sacramento State is a 13-point favorite. As far as I know, Kevin Thompson is 100%. All systems go. So I am all systems go with Sacramento State. I mean, they have been, when healthy, when Kevin Thompson's available, without question, the best team in the Big Sky Conference. They're playing a home game against obviously a very sound and solid Austin Peay team, but I believe in what Troy Thompson and KT are getting done over there. Not to mention Andy Thompson scheming it up defensively, and George Obina, and so I'm going to take Sacramento State minus the 13 points to win that thing going.
When Sac State, after the very memorable 3-game run they went on to start 3-0, and they destroyed Eastern Washington before we knew Eastern Washington was sort of middle of the road, and they destroyed Montana State, and all of a sudden we started thinking, is Montana State maybe not what we thought they were? And then they destroyed Montana, and you're like, oh, actually Sac State is just straight up for real. And then after they lost that Weber State game, for whatever reason, it made them lose their luster, even though they shared the Big Sky Conference title. And I think part of that is just the injury and the uncertainty surrounding Kevin Thompson. They needed a miracle comeback to win at NAU. But I still think that team,
which they got and did.
They got and they did, and then Kevin Thompson returned the next week. And it's like we talked about earlier, too. Sometimes when you beat a team that hasn't lived up to their own expectations, it doesn't seem like as good of a win. Beating UC Davis, your rival, is a good win. That's a good win.
Yep.
And so I think that they've lost a little bit of their hype, but they're still the number 4 team in the country. And with Kevin Thompson at the helm, how great of a play caller Troy Taylor is, but more importantly, the formula that they've crafted on defense. I mean, they have one of the best cover corners in the country in Deron Bland. Darren Chotes, he's got 18 tackles for loss. He's leading the league as a true 3-tech interior guy. I mean, he is a menace on the interior of their line. And then you unleash George Obina on 3rd and long. I couldn't believe he wasn't on the Buck Buchanan finalist list. I would have voted for him straight up over all the other guys in the Big Sky Conference, and I have a high regard for both Dante Olson and Bryce Stirk. I thought Obina was the best guy in the league I saw this year. And so I think that Sac State has the formula, particularly to win the playoffs. And you look at Austin Peay, they're built around their quarterback. The kid is having a great year. Javon Craig, he's having a great year. And he's been really key to them surging. But if Sac can draw like they did in their last game against UC Davis, if they get 20,000 for a playoff game, that's going to be awesome.
Huge.
And they can have a real deal home field advantage. And Austin Peay's a great story, a team in the playoffs for the first time, but I just don't think they're ready. I agree with you. I think Sac State is going to take care of business.
Yeah.
So I think the seeds will hold, and I think the Big Sky teams will move on, and I think the Big Sky teams will play each other in the final 8 of the FCS playoff.
There you go. The FCS speculators, well, as it were, against the spread for the Big Sky teams. By the way, if you want to check out the podcast, it's going to be available. And we have Randy Reinhardt, covers Illinois State on ISU versus UCA, University of Central Arkansas. Also, Jim Nelson, covering Northern Iowa, talk to us about UNI going back to Brookings to take on SDSU, who they lost to badly the first time around just 3 weeks ago. Steve Edelson, he covers Monmouth. Take a look at Monmouth versus James Madison. And Mike Geigenheimer is covering Nichols State to talk about Nichols versus North Dakota State University. So all those coming up in the podcast. They will get 4 questions with them, talking to them about all that stuff. So there you go. You go check out the podcast anytime, FCS Speculators, wherever you get your podcast, you can listen to that. Take a quick break. Why don't you give us a call, 329-1899, 329-1899. Call right now. We got wings for you from the Desperado Sports Tavern. We also got some trivia questions. So give us a call right now, 329-1899. We'll go through the questions and see if we can't get you some wings, maybe even a shirt to the Desperado right after this. Hey, December is winter prep month at Shine Auto Detailing. The roads, salts, and sands wreak havoc on the paint and finish of your ride, so protect your car and truck from harsh winter elements by having a premium exterior detail, which includes a ceramic coating and final finish. You see what I'm saying here? Your car looks great, but it's also protected. It's kind of a 2-for-1. It's not just for the vanity of looks, it's also for the health of your ride. You see what I'm saying here? When spring comes around, you got that ceramic coating on it. You just drive through the car wash, and boom, it looks like it's been a freshly waxed vehicle. If you care about your ride, protect it from winter, and this week only, save $50 off. You save $50. Call to schedule. Just search Auto Detailing in Missoula and pick the one with over 100 5-star reviews. That's Shine Auto Detailing. They're at shineautodetailing.net. And again, save $50 on a detailing right now online.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at MontanaAdvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
Ready, set, go. Have you looked at the calendar? It's time. Get the high-interest credit card. Apply for a holiday loan from Farmer State Bank. Holiday loans feature low monthly payments that are easy to budget for. On approval, you'll have the cash you need for a holiday to remember. Whether it's shopping, travel, whatever. Get the details and apply today at Farmer State Bank or Montana Bank in 1807. 8,000 lender, member FDIC.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, locally owned, with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box store. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit 6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Hey there, Missoula. Mark Moss from Tell Us Something, inviting you to join us for an evening of live storytelling at the Wilma, December 10th at 7 p.m. 8 storytellers take the stage to share their true personal stories from memory on the theme Hippie. We again welcome American Sign Language interpreters who will sign for our deaf friends in the Missoula community. Get your tickets now at Top Hat Box, Rock and Rudy's, or log in to events. December 10th, 7 p.m. at the Wilma Shipping Store. Theater.
Local Missoulian Hokato Eastman is in urgent need of a new automated wheelchair. His current chair is very old and causing life-threatening pressure sores. Hokato's dream chair would allow him to be more independent and to stand for the first time in 20 years. Please help Hokato gain dignity, health, and quality of life. We hope that you sincerely consider giving money to this worthy and essential life-saving cause. Stop by the Hope Center or find his GoFundMe campaign at thehopecenter.us/wheelchair to donate. Let's get Hokato this chair, Montana.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Colter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Good evening, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. The Big Sky Conference volleyball season wrapped up over the Thanksgiving holiday with the Big Sky Championship Tournament in Sacramento. The Montana Grizzlies made their second straight trip to the league's postseason, but fell in 4 sets to top-seeded Northern Colorado. The consecutive appearances by the Grizz, though, is a huge step forward as the program missed the 8-team tournament altogether for 3 years in a row prior to that.
After winning 10 league matches for the first time since 2004, the Montana State volleyball team earned its first victory at the Big Sky Tournament since 2005. Bobcats beat defending champion and host Sac State in 4 sets to move into the tournament semifinals on Thanksgiving Day. In that match against the top-seeded Bears, though, MSU managed to forge 48 ties and 18 lead changes, but eventually lost in 4 sets.
Why are we having this thing on Thanksgiving? Just crazy to me.
The sports information directors agree with you, I promise.
When the Big Sky All-League Volleyball Awards came out, MSU landed 3 players on the first team for the first time in school history. Senior outside hitter Evie Wilson and senior Alyssa Rizzo, who also earned Big Sky Libero of the Year, landed on the first team, as did junior outside hitter Hannah Scott. Montana senior Missy Huddleston earned second-team All-League honors for the Grizz.
And finally, the Montana football team preparing for its first playoff game since 2015, and they earned a verbal commit. 3-star running back Xavier Harris of Oxnard, California.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
It's time for a Wing It Wednesday. So let's have a little bit of fun, shall we? It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. And remember, this Saturday, get to Kurtz in Missoula, their 7th annual snow day, the biggest sale of the entire year, bar none, 1 day only. You're going to save a ton of money and get all the best presents for the people in your world, okay? Kurtz Polaris Saturday. If you would like to find us on Instagram, by the way, and Twitter, go ahead and do that at 1029 ESPN. That's the handle, both places, Instagram and Twitter. Rocking and rolling on the social meds for you, okay? At Gus Tootell and at Skyline Sports MT as well on Twitter. You can find us there. Let's go now to the phones that we welcome in Ross to the show for a Wing It Wednesday. Hello, Ross. How are you?
Good. What's going on, Ryan?
Well, not too much, just working away. You're over there a man of leisure trying to get some wings, and I'm here slaving away entertaining the community. It's what I'm about. But we are going to have some questions for you. They're Coulter's questions. He says to me today, these are hard. So I hope that somebody who knows something calls in. So Ross, how do you feel about that? I know that doesn't engender a ton of confidence, but I like you here. I think this is going to where there's a good spot for you. You know.
Let's do what we can.
Okay.
We'll do it.
All right. 3 questions for you. You get 2 of them right. You got yourself the wings. You get all 3. You get a shirt. If you need any help, I'm your lifeline.
Boy, some chicken wings would really hit the spot. Tell me likey. Tell me want wingy.
All right, Coulter. Question number 1 for Ross. Let's go. What do we got over there?
All right, Ross. Number 1. These are all FCS playoff questions, kind of about the Cats and the Grizz. So number 1, the last time Montana won a playoff game came in 2015. Who did the 2015 Grizz beat in the first round of the FCS playoffs in Missoula?
Oh, man. Honestly, UMass, but not sure. Brian, you want to help me out on this one?
In 2015.
It was Bob Stitt's first year at the helm.
Snowy and cold.
It was a little bit snowy. It was a sunny day.
Who did they beat in the first round?
Who did they beat in the first round? The second round they went to North Dakota State and lost after having beat North Dakota State the first game of the year. But in that first round, they beat a fellow Missouri Valley football conference team. The score was 24-17.
Ryan, Scott.
I don't know. Northern Iowa.
We'll put it on pause. You guys continue to think. I'll tell you now, it's not Northern Iowa. Okay, number 2.
Good avoidance.
They only get harder. Number 2, Montana State last won a playoff game in 2012. Who did the Bobcats beat in the second round of the 2012 FCS playoffs in Bozeman? I'll give you a clue. It's an East Coast team.
Got me, Coulter.
Ross, what do you think? I'll just buy you wings? Does that sound like the plan here, the way this is going right now?
Yeah.
Okay, go to question number 3, Coulter. This will be the easiest.
Okay.
In 1911.
No. How many playoff appearances have the Montana Grizzlies made in their history? What will Saturday mark? It is the what playoff appearance in school history. It is, by the way, the all-time most in the history of the FCS.
You want a lifeline there, Ross?
Yeah, of course.
24.
24th playoff appearance.
24.
That is correct.
For Montana
so
in the playoffs.
You got one in the bag. So now we'll go back to these other 2. First round of the 2015 playoffs, Montana beat a Missouri Valley Football Conference team that is not North Dakota State and not Northern Iowa. Those are your clues. And the Bobcats won a 2012 game at home against an East Coast team that was, I'll give you one more clue. Their star player was a Walter Payton Award finalist, running back, who also got a Heisman vote that year, named Miguel Masonet. You guys have a better chance of the Montana question.
Yeah.
Illinois. Question.
I mean, I don't know. We could run through them. Southeast Missouri.
Neither of those teams are
South
in the
Dakota State.
Conference. There you go. That's a pretty good guess.
Really?
Pretty good guess. Not the correct guess.
It is the correct guess. It's the only pretty good guess you could have when it's binary. It's yes or no.
We're in a giving mood today because you guys can't even collaborate to find an SDSU. I mean, they made the playoffs like 9 years in a row.
I know, but I would have been surprised that. I mean, I was at the game, so I should know.
I was too.
I would have not thought that they would have been traveling on the road in the first round.
That was the first year of this rise because they had just announced the plans to finalize their new facilities. And they had guys like Taryn Christian Roseboom, Jake Weineke, Dallas Goddard. They were all freshmen.
Young guys.
4 years later, they're number 3 team in the country.
Yeah. Hey, Ross, awful job, but congratulations on the wings, man.
And by the way, I was just
it wasn't good.
And by the way, I misphrased. The Bobcat question was actually incorrect because I'm an idiot and I forgot that Montana State won a first round game last year against Incarnate.
Well, right.
But I don't think you guys would have got that. Yeah. The answer to that one is Stony Brook. Was the answer I was looking.
Stony Brook, an outstanding lacrosse.
Hey, regardless, you guys managed to cheat your way to Ross getting some wings. So congratulations, Ross. Give your information to David. Enjoy the best wings in the city of Missoula.
Thanks, guys.
Ross, not really getting it done, but getting the wings anyway. I don't know why it is out of my head that they played South Dakota State.
24-17, Tyrone Holmes was a freak. He had 3 sacks.
Yeah, I mean, blue and yellow is pretty unmistakable. All right, very good. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Take a quick break. Speaking of playoffs, Jeff Undercuffler. He is the quarterback for the Albany Great Danes. He's a redshirt freshman. He's thrown for more touchdowns than anybody in FCS history as a freshman, 39 of them. Albany headed to Bozeman to take on the Montana State Bobcats. He joins us next.
Not all gift cards are created equal. The Montana Club gift card comes with more handcrafted breakfast, lunch, and dinner favorites than any other local card. Home-style breakfasts, perfectly grilled Angus steaks, piled high sandwiches, expertly mixed cocktails, local craft beers, and much, much more. This year, give Montana made. Buy in-store or at montanaclub.com. Give $100 in gift cards and get a $10 gift card free. It's easy. Happy holidays from everyone at your Montana Club.
You know what's at stake after a car accident? Not only will you have to deal with pushy insurance companies, auto repair shops, endless doctor's appointments, and dozens of unforeseen problems, but also your normal day-to-day life. I'm Coulter here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys, and she knows how hard this can be.
That's right. And with all of that, it can seem tempting to take the quick settlement that the insurance company is offering. But I can tell you from experience that it is not going to be a fair amount. I see it all the time where someone has settled with the insurance company and months later realizes that they still have pain from the accident. And now they're having to pay those bills out of their pocket. I don't want that to happen to anyone.
So what should our listeners do, Catherine?
Give us a call and discuss your situation with an attorney. The call is free and we'll gladly talk about your situation with you. If you have a case that we can help with, you will owe us nothing out of pocket. We actually make the insurance company pay for us to help you.
There you have it. Call the Advocates, 406-640-4444, or go online, montanaadvocates.com. You deserve the Advocates on your side.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Americans waste 3.8 million gallons of gas idling every single day. Idling for more than 10 seconds actually uses more fuel and produces more emissions than stopping and restarting. So next time you're stopped for more than 10 seconds at the train, getting coffee, or picking your child up from school, please turn your vehicle off.
Hey there, Missoula. Mark Moss from Tell Us Something, inviting you to join us for an evening of live storytelling at the Wilma, December 10th at 7 p.m. 8 storytellers take the stage to share their true personal stories from memory on the theme Tipping Point. We again welcome American Sign Language interpreters who will sign for our deaf friends in the Missoula community. Get your tickets now at the Top Hat Box Office, Rock and Rudy's, or LogJamPresents.com. December 10th, 7 p.m. at the Wilma, Tipping Point Story. See you there.
Tootell, 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
It's the playoffs. Let's talk to somebody who's playing in the playoffs, shall we? Jeff Undercuffler, the quarterback of the Albany Great Danes. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Great to be with you on this Wednesday afternoon. Hope you are having a great day. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Go there this Saturday, December the 7th. It is their 7th annual snow day, 1 day only, the best sale of the entire year, bar none, at Kurtz Polaris. We go now to the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. We welcome in the redshirt freshman quarterback of the Albany Great Danes. They are playing in Bozeman this Saturday against Montana State in the second round of the FCS playoffs. Jeff Undercuffler. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us, man. How you doing?
Good.
I bet you are doing pretty well. I mean, you have led your team as a freshman, 39 touchdowns for crying out loud on an absolutely outstanding year. Look, I know you played a little bit last season, used that redshirt rule to get some game experience, but did you think when you took over this team this season that you'd be able to have this kind of production in your first year being a full-time starter?
No, certainly just as a freshman, just coming into any kind of university you come in, personally, kind of got to have that mindset that you're just going to be the guy, the leader. So yeah, pretty much coming in here, using those 3 or 4 games last year as a redshirt really helped me grow mentally. Because at this level, everyone's definitely physically capable of enough of playing football. So, like I said, it was definitely a huge blessing to redshirt last year, coming here to help my team to a second-round playoff game.
Takes back to last week. I watched your guys' entire game against Central Connecticut State. It was kind of a slugfest. Against Central Connecticut, actually even probably had the momentum early, and going to halftime tied 7-7. You guys come out the locker room and just smash them. You throw 4 touchdown passes in the third quarter, end up with 6 touchdown passes overall, which ties single-game record in FCS football playoff history. What changed at halftime? What were you guys able to do to surge down the stretch?
I mean, first of all, shout out to they came out guns blazing on us, and they had a good game plan on us. But us collectively as a team, we just kind of went into halftime 7-7. It was a tie ball game. Coach Tootell just kind of gave us like a quick 10-second feel of, hey man, it's 7-7, playoff game. It's pretty much how it's going to be, and basically whatever team makes the less penalties, less mistakes, and is more sound is going to come out on top. We came out second half guns blazing, and we just didn't look back from there.
First playoff win ever in Albany history. When you hear that, I mean, that's got to mean something to you and your teammates.
Yeah, it's awesome. First of all, it's just such a blessing and so humbling to even be in the position we are right now, to be in the playoffs. Just kind of hats off to our team, our coaches, and our whole program. We've just been grinding all winter last year, leading up to this year, and we definitely deserved it.
Jeff Undercuffler joining us. He's the quarterback of the University of Albany Great Danes. They will be playing in the second round in Bozeman this Saturday against Montana State. And Jeff, as you look at the Montana State Bobcats, they've had a tremendous year. They've really been kind of growing under Jeff Choate into a point where they're now a top 5 team in the nation. The Big Sky Conference has a good reputation in the FCS when it comes to football. But when you look at Montana State, on tape and kind of start to familiarize yourself with the team, what do you see from them? We know that they have a very strong defense in particular. So when you're looking at them, breaking them down, what do you see?
They're just a great, well-coached, well-rounded football team. Their defense, they like to use offensive lines with all their stumps and all that kind of stuff, with all their defensive fronts. More and more tape I've been watching on them. They're a big one-high zone team, and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they like to drop 8 in the coverage, so there's not going to really be a lot of passing for us offensively. But and that just means that our O-line, Alex and Carl, are going to have to do a great job. I really think that they're going to go in there and play their game, and us collectively as an offense, we just got to stay confident, stay calm, and our plays will come.
One guy that Montana State's head coach pointed to as a real weapon for you guys is Juwan Green. I know you'd probably agree, but like Coach Choate said, 80 catches, 16 touchdowns. That's impressive no matter what level of football you're playing at. You got 16 touchdowns in 13 games. It might as well be Pop Warner. You're still killing people. So what have you seen out of Juwan this year? What makes him such a great weapon?
He's just so athletic. At 6', 190 or whatever he is. He runs a sub 4.4, great routes. He got great hands. He's got great football awareness and all that kind of stuff. It definitely is a blessing to have number 4 on our team. He's just a huge weapon in our vertical passing game and all that kind of stuff. And we do a good job of recognizing our one-on-one matchup. That's a big thing in this offense. And when Jawan's one-on-one, I'm going to him, and I'm going to keep going to him until he can show me that they can stop him.
Well, that seems smart. I don't know. I don't know a lot of football. That seems like the smart thing to do back there. Just let him go up and make a play. Jeff Undercuffler joining us. He's the quarterback of the University of Albany Great Danes. They're going to be playing at Montana State Saturday against the Bobcats. And it's interesting to me, Jeff, when I look at your guys' season. You lose first game of the year to Central Michigan, obviously an FBS team. Two of your other three losses, though, on a 9-4 year are by 3 points. One in overtime to Monmouth, who's nationally ranked, had a great season this year. You're 9-4. You finished the season, I think, ranked 25th in the FCS stats standings. Do you think, though, that maybe you're a little bit better than what people think, and maybe because there isn't the history of playoff success that maybe some people are sleeping on you guys a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. All this Albany has just been overlooked. Everyone thinks that we're not as good as we are, and we just use that as more fuel to our fire. This week, we've got to come out guns blazing, all 4 quarters, football to tell through halves, all that kind of stuff. So we're ready. We're ready to have fun. We're ready to win.
Tell us about your path to Albany. Who else were you recruited by coming out of high school, and what was the main selling points that got you there at the New York State Capitol?
Yeah, well, at high school, I kind of feel like I was under-recruited, but that's okay because we're rolling right now as a team, and that's ultimately all that matters. About 4 or 5 Power 5 started to visit me in high school from the beginning of junior to senior year, and I went to a couple camps, and they just never pulled through. And one morning before I woke up for school, I think it was on a Thursday or Friday, Coach Dutz called me. He goes, "How would you like to receive a full scholarship at UAlbany?" And I believe that day or the next day I committed. I went up to my official visit. I had fun. I loved all the coaches. And from there was just no looking back.
Was it always going to be football for you, Jeff? Because I know you were an outstanding baseball and basketball player in high school as well. Was football sport that you said, no, this is what I got to do?
That's a good question. Because, like you said, in baseball, I played football, basketball, and baseball. More importantly, I played baseball my whole life until I was 4 or 5. My whole life up to sophomore year, that was pretty much my best sport. And my sophomore year at Holy Cross won our first baseball state championship. So, and then the summer leading into junior year is when I got that offer from Albany. Like I said, there was just no looking back from there, and I became a football player. Right now, I love it.
We talked to Coach Gattuso a couple mornings ago, and you could just tell he's an intense guy. And reading everything about him and his background and where he comes from, and the fact that he was a defensive lineman at Penn State on a national championship team. How do you think just his personality, his persona, influences you guys as a team? And what's it like playing for a guy that is sort of a hard-nosed defensive line type coach?
Yeah, he's definitely a hard-nosed guy. Like you said, all D linemen they're all nasty, and they're just dogs out, and they're animals, and all that kind of stuff. From Pittsburgh, Coach Gattuso, he's the man. He's awesome, great coach, and even a better guy. Every day during meetings and all that kind of stuff. After practices, all he does is try to preach to his team that we're here for each other. That's all that matters. All the coaches, players, trainers, and just our whole football program is just one big team. And he just does a great job of just pouring confidence into us and just making sure that he knows that we know that he loves us.
Jeff Undercuffler joining us, quarterback at the University of Albany, playing the second round of the FCS playoffs after obtaining their first playoff win in program history last week against Central State. And Jeff, I know, growing up in Jersey, now you're in the state capital of the state of New York. Maybe Montana doesn't land on your radar all that much. But when you think about coming out to Montana, I know it's a business trip for you and all the guys, but is there a certain sort of interest factor or curiosity about going out into, the mountain time zone and seeing what the state of Montana is all about?
I mean, yeah, there's, like you said, first of all, we're here for a business trip. We're coming there to win a playoff football game. But also, we're from New York, they're from Montana. I bet you they've never been to New York, and we've certainly never been to Montana. And that's just obviously a different part of the world. And it's just going to be so cool just playing at their big stadium. I think like 25,000 fans. Big time sounds in the back and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be so fun just playing the game we love with our coaches, our brothers, and all that. So.
Well, Jeff, we're certainly looking forward to it. It's going to be a blast on Saturday. Travel well. We'll look forward to this game. We're really excited to have Albany coming to the state of Montana, all right?
Can't wait. Thank you guys so much.
You bet. Thank you. Jeff Undercuffler, quarterback of the Albany Great Danes. And crazy, Colter. I mean, last week, 1,600 people in attendance at the game. And again, that's well below the norm, which does happen on a Thanksgiving weekend and everything. But that's crazy for a playoff game and the first ever victory for Albany. And now they're going to play in front of, 22,000 people, probably going to be a packed stadium in this first week of December at Bobcat Stadium. So an adjustment for sure. And he's going to have a day on his hands because he's got to play great in order for Albany, I think, to stay in this game. But fun to talk to him, and obviously a kid with with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, which you like, and also tremendous talent coming out of New Jersey and playing for Albany and leading him to that first ever playoff win. So congratulations to him on that. We'll look forward to this game on Saturday. Hour number 1 in the books. We take a break. On the other side, how about a Wing It Wednesday right now? Let's do it. 329-1899. I got some questions for you. I'm not asking you history questions, people. I'm asking you current events, standings, NFL, NBA. 329-1899. We got some wings for you from the Desperado Sports Tavern. Give us a call right now. 329-1899. We'll do some trivia right after this.
If you're looking for the perfect Christmas gift, think spicy. 'Tis the season for seasoning with gift packs from Alpine Touch. 4-spice pack includes 4 Big Mountain flavors for just $19.99. Go to alpinetouch.com right now for gifts sure to keep mouths watering year-round. And if you plug in the code ESPN at checkout, you'll get a free bag of Alpine Touch sunflower seeds. From gift packs to gift cards to the Grand Slam package, Alpine Touch makes the perfect gift for anyone on your list. Go to alpinetouch.com right now to order Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tire. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment, brakes, shocks, wheels, and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at LesSchwab.com. Les Schwab Tire, doing the right thing. 1950.
On Russell, across from the fairground.
There's a saying, opportunity never knocks twice. When you're ready to take advantage of your next opportunity, look to your local bank. Opportunity Bank of Montana. Opportunity Bank offers options for mortgage loans, small business loans, equipment financing, agriculture, and more. Our experienced team can provide solutions to help you welcome your next big opportunity. There's nothing like the feeling of progress. So let's get started today. Come see us at your local Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Local Missoulian Hokato Eastman is in urgent need of a new automated wheelchair. His current chair is very old and causing life-threatening pressure sores. Hokato's dream chair would allow him to be more independent and to stand for the first time in 20 years. Please help Hokato gain dignity, health, and quality of life. We hope that you sincerely consider giving money to this worthy and essential life-saving cause. Stop by the Hope Center or find his GoFundMe campaign at thehopecenter.us/wheelchair to donate. Let's get Hokato this chair, Montana.
Americans waste 3.8 million gallons of single idling for more than 10 seconds uses more fuel, produces more emissions than stopping and restarting. picking your child up from school, please turn your vehicle off.
Have you been hurt or disabled? Are you missing time from work? Not sure what to do? I'm attorney Chris Helmer, Clark Fork Law Offices in Missoula is here to help. Our team specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. We fight for the benefits you deserve. Call Clark Fork Law 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. The Big Sky Conference volleyball season wrapped up over the Thanksgiving holiday with the Big Sky Championship Tournament in Sacramento. The Montana Grizzlies made their second straight trip to the league's postseason, but fell short in 4 sets over top-seeded Northern Colorado. The consecutive appearances by the Grizz is a huge step forward after the program missed the 8-team tournament altogether the last 3 years prior.
After winning 10 league matches for the first time since 2004, the Montana State volleyball team earned its first victory at the Big Sky Tournament since 2005. They did it on Thanksgiving Day by beating defending champion host Sac State in 4 sets to move into the tournament semifinals. But in those semis against the top-seeded Bears, MSU managed to forge 48 ties, 18 lead changes before eventually losing in 4 sets.
When the Big Sky All-League Volleyball Awards came out, MSU landed 3 players on the first team for the first time in school history. Senior outside hitter Evie Wilson and senior Alyssa Rizzo, who also earned Big Sky Libero of the Year, landed on the first team, as did junior outside hitter Hannah Scott. Montana senior Missy Huddleston earned second-team All-League honors for the Grizz.
And finally, the Montana football team is preparing for its first playoff game since 2015, but still earned a verbal commit. 3-star running back Xavier Harris, the product of Oxnard High School in Southern California, rushed for 3,669 yards, 58 touchdowns.
Presented by Clark Fork Law.
Going to do a Wing It Wednesday, 329-1899. 329-1899, the phone number. Got some questions for you. You supply the answers, and we'll supply you with wings to the Desperado. 329-1899. On your phones, all guests joined us via the Ragged Brothers RV phone line. We are Tootell and Nuanez, hour number 2. Outstanding to be with you. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris is at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. And we go this Saturday, you got the biggest sale of the entire year, all day long. At Kurtz Polaris, you get everybody marked off on your Christmas list and save a ton of money doing it and get all the best stuff. Kurtz Polaris Snow Day this Saturday. If you missed anything in the first hour, check it out in the podcast. The podcast is available wherever you get your podcast. It's available all the time. Just check it out on the podcast and search Tootell Nuanez. Listen to it, rate it, review it. We appreciate that. It's brought to us by the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. We also are going to have for you the FCS Speculators podcast coming out. So go ahead and get there on that as well. If you'd like to listen live, sometimes it's easier to do it just on your computer or your device, your tablet, what have you. You go online to the website 1029ESPN.com, 1029ESPN.com. You listen live on the Listen Live tab, and there you got it. A stream thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. Coulter, the people from Albany, the team, they're going to visit the Museum of the Rockies on Friday. That's the thing they're doing. And one player was particularly excited about this because why, quote, there's nothing to do in Montana but look at the mountains probably.
This is the point.
Is that right?
I'm laughing so hard at this article. It's my favorite part about the FCS playoffs is particularly when teams come from foreign lands to Montana, because Montana really is a outpost. It's like Greg Gattuso told us, we'll play the sound for you tomorrow. Last time I checked, Montana is in America. He said we don't need a passport, I don't think, to go there. But it's just so funny because of all is there a bigger outpost in the country than Montana? I mean, in the lower 48, it has to be it, right?
Yes.
Especially when you're talking about teams coming.
Wyoming might be, but is there? Right. I mean, is there even an FCS team in Wyoming?
There's not.
So, at this level of football, I would say Wyoming is probably a bigger outpost than Montana is, although I would say they just occupy equally black spaces in most people's minds that are, in the Eastern time zone.
Well, right, and if you go to Laramie, likely you're going to fly into Denver, and you probably know what Denver is. It's just funny, but reading the quotes from these Albany players, Eli Menser, who's their great defensive end, who's got 14 and a half sacks, he said, I'm definitely excited. I've never been to Montana. I know there's not much going on there or not much stuff to do other than just sit and look at the mountains and whatnot. So going to museums and seeing some dinosaurs, that's exciting.
That is going to be good. By the way, we've had a repeat call. So, you can try and spread it out a little. So 329-1899, if you want to do a wing it, you can call in and do that. I've been to the Museum of the Rockies, Colton, and it's cool, man. There's a lot going on in there. Plus, they got this, I'm always into the stuff for the kids. Here's a little thing, okay? You have these $1 million ideas and you don't want to tell them to anybody because you think you want to do it. But I'm never going to bring this about. So let me throw this out to the entrepreneurs. Like a proper dinner restaurant, you know what I mean? I'm not talking about fancy, whatever, but just a good place, get a nice meal and all that stuff with a really honest to goodness, keep the kids in another room, door shut, with maybe a person in there watching them like you might get at a gym. One of the great things about going to the gym is a lot of these gyms have a place for the kids to go where there's actually a person watch. Let's put that onto a restaurant. And let her rip. You know what I mean? Museum of the Rockies, you go upstairs, kids all day long. You could go look at the dinosaur bones. I took my kids in the dinosaurs. Screams. Palpable terror from my children when they saw the T-Rex standing there looking at them, which, frankly, is probably the right reaction.
I know we got to call, but one more great quote from this story. I just put it on Twitter as well. You can find it at SkySportsMT.com. There's also a Genghis Khan exhibit at the Museum of the Rockies right now. So Greg Katusa, who is a cut-up, he's a funny guy. Yeah. We'll look forward to sharing the interviews. He said, I figured Tyrannosauruses and T-Rexes, or Tyrannosauruses and tyrants will be ready to roll. Pretty good.
It's a great line. Standard DN. All right, let's go to the phones for a Wing It Wednesday. We welcome James to the show. Hello, James. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Doing great, James. Here's the deal. We got 3 questions for you. If you get 2 of them, you got yourself a basket of wings to the Desperado. Have you been to the Desperado for the wings before?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay. They are very good. And so we'll see what we can do for you there. If you get all 3, you got yourself a shirt. And if you need help on any one of these, I'm your life, or Coulter, is your lifeline. I'm asking the question. All right?
Okay.
Spot. Tell me likey. Tell me want wingy.
There we go. Current events, professional sports. How about if I turn the mics on? Does that make it easier to hear me? Sorry. I feel,
a little easier.
I get lost sometimes. Sorry. Here's we go. 3 questions for you. Current events, standings in professional sports. In the NBA, do you even know the NBA is going on right now? They're just flying under the radar, the National Basketball Association. NBA, tell me what team in the NBA has the singularly worst record in the league right now today?
Oh, boy, I have no idea. I guess I'll use my lifeline early.
Okay. Coulter, you love the NBA. You have said to me you haven't even watched a game yet. Do you know who's the worst team in the NBA by standing right now?
I do. I haven't watched the NBA hardly at all this year. But I do know who has the worst record in the NBA because the Golden State Warriors have the worst record in the NBA, and everybody in the NBA seems to be taking much glee in that fact.
Would you like to accept his suggestion of the Golden State Warriors having the worst record in the NBA right now?
Yep. Yeah. Golden State.
Good choice by you, James. It is the Golden State Warriors. They are 4-18, which is a half game worse than the hapless New York Knicks, who are 4-17. So the Golden State Warriors, the worst team in the NBA. All right, here we go. Let's go to the other side. There are 2 teams tied for the best record in the NBA. One from the East, one from the West. Who are the 2 teams with the best records in the NBA right now?
Boy, what's with these NBA questions?
I know.
I think it's the Lakers. I think the Lakers.
You are right. It is the Lakers of the West. They have a record of 18-3 on the year. LeBron James, as I've been trying to convince Coulter all along, in the best shape of his career.
Stop.
Let's go to the East. What team in the East also with an 18-3 record? Can you think of who that is?
Oh, boy.
I'll give you a hint. They had the best record in the NBA last year.
They did.
Is Milwaukee in the East? Oh, Milwaukee.
It is Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Bucks. That's right. Giannis Antetokounmpo. 18-3. How about that? Okay, you got yourself a basket of wings to the Desperado, James. Excellently done by you. Here we go. Question number 3. See if we can't get you a shirt as well. There are 4 NFL teams right now who all share the best record in the NFL at 10-2. Give me 3 of the 4 teams that are 10-2 in the National Football League right now.
All right. New England?
Yes.
One game ahead of my Buffalo Bills that you always mock.
Say it, dude. Say it ain't so. I love the Bills.
Hey, the Bills are on Sunday Night Football this year for the first time since 2007.
That's right.
Gonna crush Pittsburgh, right?
Let's go. They will win that game. They need to for the Browns.
Let's see. Seattle's the 1 seed in the NFC, so it must be Seattle.
Seattle is also 10-2 after their win Monday night over Minnesota. Yes.
Baltimore.
The Baltimore Ravens are 10-2. Excellent work, James. You got the trifecta right there, my friend. Congratulations. Give your information there to David in the back, and we will get you set up with the wings and the shirt because you went 3 for 3 today. Well done, my friend.
Great. Thanks, you guys.
You got it. Thank you, James. Coulter, who's the 4th team that's 10-2? Seahawks?
The 49ers.
The 49ers. That's okay. That's how we do it on a Wednesday around here, Wing It Wednesday. It's time now for our ESPN Roundtable. Happy to have Mick Delaney, the former head coach of the University of Montana, on the Roundtable with us. He was the head coach of the Grizzlies the last time Montana had a bye in the FCS playoffs, and the last time there was a cold game in Missoula that was against a truly hot weather opponent in Coastal Carolina. Actually did not go well for the Grizzlies on that particular day. So we're having a little revisit. I don't want to tear off too many scabs, as it were, but Mick Delaney, obviously a very fun guy to talk to, great guy, and a guy who has his finger on the pulse of all things football in the state of Montana. We'll talk to him on the Roundtable right after this.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes, and shocks, and wheels, and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1950.
On Russell, across from the fairground.
Not all gift cards are created equal. The Montana Club gift card comes with more handcrafted breakfast, lunch, and dinner favorites than any other local card. Home-style breakfasts, perfectly grilled Angus steaks, piled-high sandwiches, expertly mixed cocktails, local craft beers, and much, much more. This year, give Montana made. Buy in-store or at montanaclub.com. Give $100 in gift cards and get a $10 gift card free. It's easy. Happy holidays from everyone at your Montana Club.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Down Pump, ooh, pump it up.
Corona and High Country Jerky sounds so good. I think I'll stop by Town Pump on my way home and grab me a 12-pack of Corona for only $14.99 and some High Country Jerky for $7.99. It's always quick and easy, and there's a Town Pump right down the road.
Hey, Coulter Nuanez from Tootell, Nuanez. You need a great place for a Christmas gift. I got a spot for you. Aspen Sound in Missoula. They got all the hookups for everything you could possibly need for your vehicles. What are some of the sweet things you got going on down there, Tom?
Thanks, Coulter. You know, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto have sure been popular this year for safety and convenience. You can do text messaging, maps, pretty much everything you need, phone calls, music, everything right from the touch of your radio. We also have remote car starters, as you know, and window tint. Lots of goodies at a great price. Come on down and see us.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Hey there, Missoula. Mark Moss from Tell Us Something, inviting you to join us for an evening of live storytelling at the Wilma, December 10th at 7 p.m. 8 storytellers take the stage to share their true personal stories from memory on the theme, Tipping Point. We again welcome American Sign Language interpreters who will sign for our deaf friends in the Missoula community. Get your tickets now at the Top Hat Box Office, Rockin' Rudy's, or LogjamPresents.com. December 10th, 7 p.m. at the Wilma, Tipping Point Stories. See you there.
ESPN Missoula.
Good afternoon. Ryan Tootell here with your sports news. The Big Sky Conference volleyball season wrapped up over the Thanksgiving holiday with the Big Sky Conference Championship Tournament in Sacramento. The Montana Grizzlies made their second trip to the league's postseason, but fell short in 4 sets to top-seeded Northern Colorado. The consecutive appearances, though, by the Grizz is a huge step forward after the program missed the 18 tournament altogether for 3 years in a row. After winning 10 league matches for the first time since 2004, the Montana State volleyball team earned its first victory at the Big Sky Tournament since 2005. The Bobcats beat defending champion and host Sacramento State in 4 sets to move into the tournament semifinals. In that match against the top-seeded Bears, MSU managed to forge 48 ties and 18 lead changes before eventually losing in 4 sets. When the Big Sky All-League Volleyball Awards came out, MSU had 3 players on the first team for the first time in school history. Senior outside hitter Evie Wilson and senior Alyssa Rizzo, who also earned Big Sky Libero of the Year, landed on the first team, as did junior outside hitter Hannah Scott. Montana senior Missy Huddleston earned second-team All-League honors for the Grizz. And finally, the Montana football team is preparing for its first playoff game since first playoff game after a bye here since 2015, but still earned a verbal commitment this week from 3-star running back Xavier Harris, the product of Oxnard High in Southern California, rushed for 3,669 yards and 58 touchdowns in his career. For the ESPN Roundtable presented by Paradise Falls, and the subject this week, Mick Delaney, former Grizzly head football coach. Great to be with you. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Hello. Thank you for being with us. Broadcasting live, as always, from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. And check them out this Saturday, the 7th annual Snow Day, one day only at Kurtz Polaris. Best sale of the entire year, bar none, so go there and check it out. Time now for our ESPN Roundtable. We do it every Wednesday around here at about 5:15, and then we'll air again tomorrow at noon on ESPN Radio, and then is available as part of the Big Sky Breakdown podcast series at SkylineSportsMT.com. And this week, Mick Delaney joining us to talk about his time as the head coach at the University of Montana, where he thinks the program is now, and reflections on playing cold weather games against warm weather opponents in the playoffs, which he knows a thing or two about. So please enjoy this week's ESPN Roundtable.
Well, welcome into the ESPN Roundtable, and happy this week to be joined by former University of Montana head football coach Mick Delaney. Coach Delaney, thanks so much for being with us. How are you?
Well, doing really well. Just kind of wintering up here a little bit. Not liking the snow that's on the ground. You know how that goes. Like to play golf. Like that white stuff.
I thought they had a way in Butte that you could golf in the snow. I thought it was like a 365-day a year kind of activity with balls made of ice and so forth.
Well, I haven't given me any of those yet. I probably should try.
Well, Coach, we certainly appreciate you being with us, and there's so much to get to, but we wanted to start first with Montana being back in the playoffs and with a bye for the first time. Since the first time, last time you were coaching, the last time that happened. What's it like going into the playoffs and having a bye as you get ready for the week? There's sort of a discussion about whether it's helpful or hurtful. Coach Hauk certainly thought, especially with the situation with the health of a lot of the players, it was important for them to have that week off. But is there something like momentum that a team coming in to play you can ride if they've played the week before?
I think there's something to that, but when you weigh the pros and cons of both of them, to me anyway, I think that week off is always good at this point of the season. Probably wouldn't be crazy about it if you had a late season bye, but when you haven't had a bye for whatever it's been, 5-6 weeks, I think it comes at a good time just to kind of recharge physically and mentally, and give you a chance to regroup a little bit, and hopefully it doesn't kill any momentum. But there's probably different thoughts and different ideas as to whether it does or doesn't. But just from the overall perspective of preparation, and given the body a rest, they've been going since August, whatever it is, 8th, 9th, 10th, and I think it comes at a good time.
Injuries are just a part of football. The fact of the matter, and guys, varying levels of being hurt, banged up, or truly injured, all across the spectrum. You never know when it's going to come. But like watching the Cat-Grizz game a couple weeks back, had some of the best players in the country. Sammy Kim not in the game for Montana. Troy Anderson not in the game at Montana State. When you were a head coach and just throughout your coaching career, what were some of your thoughts and theories on trying to mitigate and maintain guys' health? Because it's always this time of year you're going to have guys that are banged up. So, I mean, it seems like it's impossible to keep them healthy.
Well, again, with that long of a season, week-wise, and that's what happens, in the NFL, is that extra 4 weeks, 5 weeks of football just wears and tears on the body. But, I think overall, the rules changes as far as how you conduct practice and those type of things, that it's really helped, to probably from top to bottom to give the guys an opportunity maybe not to be near as beat up as they may have been. But, when it gets really noticeable as a quarterback, and, I still think Snead was, hurt last week or 2 weeks ago when they played MSU and was not, able to go at full strength. And I remember when I was there, I think Denarius, he was hurt, the last 2 years that he played, the last 2 or 3, 4 games of the season. So, at that position, it's really critical that you stay healthy. And it seems like it's difficult to do, especially with the way things have changed a little bit, as how much you need that quarterback to use his legs, do some things that that they're doing now, and it just puts you out there a little bit and puts you in a position to to possibly get some injuries late in the year.
Coach Coulter and I have talked a lot this week about the rivalry game, and certainly what it was this year, but also in general, every year, win or lose, if you go into the postseason, you sort of have to, seems to be, recalibrate your team. So if you're coming off the high of a win, you kind of got to get back to that baseline and stay hungry. And if you have the disappointment of the loss, you got to try and work through those emotions and still get up and ready to play a playoff game. But you look at that game, especially the way it played out this year in Bozeman. What do you think the challenges will start with Bobby Houck and the Grizzlies to try and overcome that huge disappointment and try and still, look ahead to Southeastern Louisiana this week?
Well, I think the way that most coaches, including Bobby and probably Coach Joe, both, you approach that game in such a high emotional game, and but it's still a game on the schedule that, you don't prepare any less or any harder for that game, than you do any other game. The emotions run higher, but the preparation and the work are, the same, whether you're playing each other or whether you're playing Sac State or, Cal Davis. I think anymore that most coaches, and I know I always try to do to make it, there's nothing you can do about the past. What happened 2 weeks ago is over and gone, and you got to get by it and get back to work and positives that you've had, through the season, and take a look at the negatives that you've had and figure those out and get back to the grind and try to straighten out the the things that you didn't do well, and make sure that you continue to do the things that you did do well through the season.
Talking to Coach Schroed every week is so interesting. He's just such a great orator, a great speaker, and he just, he lays it all out there. He talks and talks and talks and talks, but he's so fun to listen to. But he has given sort of introspective updates on his own personal evolution as a coach. And he admitted this week, he said, last year when we were coming off the great comeback win in Missoula, and then we kind of rode the momentum of that win to a first-round playoff berth, and then we hit a wall. We couldn't figure out how to get through that wall. And then when the wall also includes going to Fargo to play North Dakota State, tough task for sure. But he said that he has just learned so much about the process of being a head coach. Now that he's in the playoffs for the second time, just how to navigate it in terms of his kids. Just broadly, as a guy who spent so much time as an assistant but also had multiple head coaching stints, how much of a learning curve is it to be a head coach, especially when it comes to things like preparing for the playoffs, preparing to play games after high-emotion games like Cat Grizz?
Well, I think just the experience of doing those things has to be, one of the probably really necessary learning experiences, because every guy's going to handle it differently. I could call Coach Joe if I was somewhere else, or him call Coach Peterson, or call Coach Hauk, or Coach Hauk call, Coach Nuanez, or whatever guys that you work for, and they can give you thoughts and ideas about how you want to go forward. I guess would be the word, but it still has to be you. Your personality. You can't just change a bunch of things because it's a playoff, but you can take, maybe organizational things a little bit as to what you do, from other people. But as far as how you're actually going to conduct your business and work with your assistant coaches and that type of thing, I think that has to be you and be what you've done to get to where you're at.
This last Cat Grizz game was a very interesting one. It's the most the Cats have beaten the Grizz since 1966. So a historic victory in terms of the margin and the way that the Cats took care of business. I'm sure I know you follow both these programs closely. So what were your thoughts overall on this last Cat Grizz?
Well, it was really unexpected by me. I really thought that, like it has been, most years, the knockdown, drag out, and go into that fourth quarter not knowing who's going to win. And we were fortunate enough a couple times that I was at Montana anyway to get I can remember 35-3, but most of them were not decided until the fourth quarter. And this one here, in some respects, I looked at it and I thought, this might have been decided on that second play of the game, on that fumble, because it just seemed like, for whatever reason, the air went out. I don't know. If you knew that, I guess you'd never lose the game. It was shocking to me to see, the margin of victory that MSU had, and at the same turn, it was surprising to me to see them run the ball as well as they did, because Weaver had come in the week before as, the number 1-2 rushing team along with Kansas State, and the Grizz did a really good job of stopping the rush against them. Then to give up 300-plus yards, is kind of shocking, really.
I want to take you back to 2013. We had Brock Coyle on our show last week, the Friday right before Cat Grizz. Bozeman native, former Montana linebacker who had a great NFL career after his time playing for the Grizzlies. We talked a lot about the 2013 Cat Grizz game, because that one to me is a really fascinating moment in the rivalry, because it was sort of this culmination of a couple groups of excellent players that had battled it out for many years, playing for one last time. You had Denarius McGee and Tanner Bluskin, Cody Kirk, Brad Daly on the Bobcat side of things, and you had Jordan Tripp and JP Kanagata and Brock Coyle and a bunch of great guys on the Grizz side of things too. Brock talked all about how emotional that win was, but how he felt there maybe was a little bit of a letdown after that, just because they had beaten Montana State. They had ended Montana State's 3 straight Big Sky titles and 3 straight runs in the playoffs and all these great things, and then kind of hit a wall. What do you remember about that specific game, first and foremost, Coach? And then secondly, is there such thing as a Cat Grizz hangover for the winner?
Gosh, that's like a 3-part question. But, the hangover part of it, I don't really believe in those things. I think there's sometimes it appears that way if you don't play as well the following week. But, you reference like Montana State and Coach Joe saying, well, maybe they had after winning the first playoff. But you got to remember who they went and played, too.
No doubt.
I mean, you can say what you want. You go to North Dakota State and get beat. If you want to call that a hangover, or if you want to say that you got beat by a better team, because they've been at the top of the rung. And I know that when we went to North Dakota State, we probably played as well as we could for 2.5 quarters. And then the game got away from it towards the end of the third quarter. But that's any time that whichever one wins that game, it's an emotional high for the winner and an emotional low, all-time low for the loser. Again, I just think you have to be mature enough as a team and as a staff to put it behind you, whether good or bad, and get ready to move on to what's next.
Mick Delaney joining us, he's the head coach of the University of Montana for the season. And Coach, we're nothing if not a bunch of tough sons of guns in Montana. Am I right about that? Especially in the wintertime.
You're right about that.
And it's been interesting, though, because in 2007 with Wofford, and then when you were there, of course, in 2013, Coastal Carolina, a bunch of warm, hot, humid, climated football teams coming into Washington Grizzly Stadium in the playoffs and ice cold and 0 degrees and all that, and ended up getting wins. And once again, not going to be that cold on Saturday, it sounds like, at Washington Grizzly, but southeastern Louisiana, will probably be cold to them when they get there. How much does that actually play into it when you have these teams from these warm climates coming to play in Missoula or Bozeman?
I that's really interesting. I think it's a real advantage, but you can offset that a little bit. I remember when I was at Colorado State, we had Dave Lay was our offensive coordinator when he hired him when we got there. A San Diego guy, head coach of San Diego State, just a really, really fine coach, and we always thought those California guys are soft. They come up here in the cold weather, and they don't like to play. And actually, Dave went back to San Diego State after he had left us at CSU and came up to Fort Collins, and there was a snowstorm, colder than heck. Look out there, and he's got all the guys running around without their shirts on, throwing snowballs at each other. And, it was a way, I think, and they played really well, and they beat us. And, you think about different things, different motivation, and that type of stuff. But, when you haven't seen snow and stuff before, I think that, again, depends on, how you approach the thing. If you, as the head coach, coaches, are real concerned about having to change that climate type of thing, then the players, they feel that, and they feel the same way. And if you try to prepare that, hey, football is football, and it's cold, and, we've got enough things with clothes that we can put on, that type of thing, even though they're not used to it. But, I think it does affect them because it's a hard thing mentally. Even if it's not cold Saturday, look out and see snow on the ground and the mountains and everything else. It's something I think that you've got to pay attention to. I don't think you can tell your players, oh, well, it doesn't make a difference, because it does. It's like us going when I was at CSU again, us going and playing Virginia in August. We played the Jim Thorpe game there one year, and it was 96 degrees and 98 degrees humidity, and I'd never been in the humidity like that. I couldn't believe it. We ended up being down, I think, by 6 or 7 at halftime. Come back and won the game. How we did that is, in my mind, was just we, didn't make a big deal of it. We had to do what we had to do and probably hydrate a little bit more. But like I say, when you're coming from the other direction into a cold environment, you've got, undergarments, things now that keep you about as warm when you're playing. If the guys that aren't get cold or get warm too.
No doubt. Well, yeah, I agree with you, Coach. I remember watching the California schools have now gone to night games for whatever reason in the Big Sky Conference, but I remember watching Montana State play at Sac State in a game that ended up 63-61, and it was a 1 o'clock kickoff. Those Bobcat boys were hurting way more than anybody that's ever played in the cold because it was about 85 degrees, and those guys, they had no idea how to handle the California heat. But on the other side of that coin, take us back to that 2013 Coastal Carolina game, because just for the pure fact of the record cold, it's an unforgettable game in the history of the state of Montana. I think it was the coldest game in the history of either Washington Grizzly Stadium or Bobcat Stadium. -8 at kickoff before even the wind was included. What do you remember about that afternoon specifically?
Ironically, I knew it was cold, but I wasn't that cold. Again, so involved in what was going on, and I'm sure if you talk to Brock, I don't remember the players complaining about being cold. I know there were times, when your hands get real cold, but I don't remember their feet being cold or it being just we had heaters. I can remember that, and parkas, and guys throw those on. And again, the guys that are playing, it usually isn't near as hard on them as the guys that are standing around and waiting around to see if they're going to play, or if they're just playing on special teams, and they're out there once every 5, 6, 7 minutes. Then it's tough on them. But in all honesty, I didn't realize that it was that much of a deal as far as the weather went that particular day, as it being just so cold that you remember freezing. I don't know. I just don't remember it being like that.
Well, Coach, when you look at the Grizzlies now, with Bobby Haukean back now in the second year and back to finishing the season at number 6 in the nation, or at least with a 6th seed as far as it goes, what do you expect out of this team, both in this game and going forward in the playoffs, and where do you think this program is at? Because they've obviously improved and have shown signs of being, frankly, dominant of nationally elite teams, but also have yet to beat Montana State in the last 4 years. So where do you gauge the University of Montana right now?
Oh, I think that, they're right back to where they probably should be. I know Coach Hauck a couple times has said, they might even be a little ahead of schedule from what they had planned on. They're still very young on defense for the most part. That at least the front four are young, and they're going to lose, 2 of their backers who obviously are not young and are really, really good players. But, I think that the way that they performed this season, for the most part, other than maybe the Montana State game, was about where you hope to be when you come in and have to make as many changes as Coach Hauck did. When he came in just 2 years ago now, there were, I think, 17, 18, 19 wide receivers on scholarship and 9 offensive linemen. It's in a year and a half they've shored that up better than it was, obviously way better than a year ago, but not to where it was when I first came back to Montana as coach in 2008-9. Our offensive lines were dominant, big guys, tough guys, and they're getting back. They'll get back to that. Like I said, I think it's improved a whole bunch this year. And I would say they're on schedule, and what will happen here in the next 2 weeks, who knows? But they'll go out. One thing they'll do, and probably discouraging Coach Hauck was, they didn't go out and play hard and compete, for 60 minutes like they had in the other, 10 games during the season.
Well, Coach, we certainly appreciate your time. We look forward to the playoff run for both the Cats and the Grizz here forthcoming, and we hope that now that you have a space between rounds of golf, maybe you can enjoy some football here too,
Oh, God, I enjoy it. I had a grandson who was a senior here at Butte Central this year, so I was able to, kind of follow him the whole season and had a lot of fun doing that. They weren't a great team, but a good bunch of kids at Butte Central, and, I still was able to get down, and I think I saw 3 of the 5 home games, and just really, really enjoyed the ball. And, I have so many ties with Montana State that people realize are starting. Coach Joe played and coached for me, and Coach Armstrong played for me. Coach Robertson, Jay played for me, and a real strong relationship with Matt Miller's family. The Hunthausen and the Sturgars from way, way back. So it just it's really, really good to see 2 really good coaches at Montana State.
Well, there you go. Our ESPN roundtable with former University of Montana head coach Mick Delaney. And again, people may not remember this, but when he was the head coach at Montana Western, that's where Jeff Choate was as well on his staff there at Montana Western. So he's got connections all over the place and to the state of Montana in general when you talk about football. We certainly appreciate Coach Delaney joining us. It was awesome to talk to him as always. If you want to catch that again, we will have it for you tomorrow at noon here on ESPN Radio, and then it is available at SkylineSportsMT.com as part of the Big Sky Breakdown podcast series. It is always there. In fact, all of the roundtables that we do, you can check out there. It is presented in part by Paradise Falls. Paradise Falls in Missoula on the south end of town, an outstanding spot, especially during the FCS playoffs. You know, ESPN, they got the rights to the FCS playoffs. They're there on ESPN 3. Well, guess what? They got them for you at Paradise Falls. They'll put any game that you'd like to have up there, 3621 Brook Street, near the intersection of South Reserve and Brooks. 18 rotating beer tap handles. They got a great late happy hour, half off appetizers, $3 draft beers after 9 o'clock. A bunch of different rooms, great for the family, great family dining environment as well. You go down there and enjoy yourself in paradise at Paradise Falls. It is Missoula's coolest hot spot. Right now, what we want to do before we take a quick break and come back, and Coulter has, jumped ship, as it were, to head on down to practice, get a couple interviews for us for the rest of the week. We got some great guests coming up this week, which I'll tell you about here in a little bit. But right now, I want to remind everybody that Friday night in Missoula, the Montana Grizzlies playing North Dakota in men's basketball. Okay, a men's basketball game on Friday night. At Montana State, if you're with us in Bozeman, Montana State hosting South Dakota State in a men's game on Thursday night. That after the women's game, the Lady Cats hosting Gonzaga. So a doubleheader for you at Brick Breeden on Thursday night. Here in Missoula, we got tickets for you to North Dakota, Montana right now. 329-1899, caller number 5. 4 tickets to go see the Grizzlies versus North Dakota. By the way, if you're a Grizz student, go to the game. First 500 kids that go to this game are going to receive something like a shirt or something like that. There's going to be free pizza for the student section as well. Coach DeCure has really been pushing this last home game each year to get people out to it. And it's going to be a fun game. And North Dakota, a great opponent, and a big game for the Grizzlies, too, as they go on the road now to Oregon and Omaha to finish up the non-conference slate. So this Friday night, 7 o'clock, here you go, 4 tickets, 329-1899, Grizzlies, North Dakota on Friday night, men's basketball. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on with minor league baseball in the state of Montana and the Pioneer League in general. We'll also get you a little look ahead at what we got coming the last couple of days of the week because it's going to be good. It's Tootell and Nuanez, ESPN Radio.
If you're looking for the perfect Christmas gift, think spicy. 'Tis the season for seasoning with gift packs from Alpine Touch. 4-spice pack includes 4 Big Mountain flavors for just $19.99. Go to alpinetouch.com right now for gifts sure to keep mouths watering year-round. And if you plug in the code ESPN at checkout, you'll get a free bag of Alpine Touch sunflower seeds. From gift packs to gift cards to the Grand Slam package, Alpine Touch makes the perfect gift for anyone on your list. Go to alpinetouch.com right now to order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box store. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit 6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
At Florence Coffee Company, it's time to treat yourself with one of our limited-time holiday favorites. Taste the cookies in the kitchen with our gingerbread man latte, or tap into our creamy maple brulee. You can always rely on our classic eggnog, or pep up with our peppermint melt-away. Hot, blended, or even iced, our limited-time holiday favorites are here through December only. Come to any Florence Coffee location or go to florencecoffeeco.com.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on your
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
Local Missoulian Hokato Eastman is in urgent need of a new automated wheelchair. His current chair is very old and causing life-threatening pressure sores. Hokato's dream chair would allow him to be more independent and to stand for the first time in 20 years. Please help Hokato gain dignity, health, and quality of life. We hope that you sincerely consider giving money to this worthy and essential life-saving cause. Stop by the Hope Center or find his GoFundMe campaign at thehopecenter.us/wheelchair to donate. Let's get Hokato this chair, Montana.
Americans waste 3.8 million gallons of single filling for more than 10 seconds is more fuel, produces more emissions than stopping and
Welcome back. Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you. Thanks for letting us hang out with you for a little while on a Wednesday afternoon, now evening, now night, I guess, across the state. It is. We are like, less than 20 days from the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, or as I like to say, the longest party of the year. Am I right about that? Of course. Tootell Nuanez, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula. This Saturday, get to Kurtz Polaris, the best sale of the entire year by far. One day only. It's their 7th annual snow day. It's a huge, huge deal. You're going to the game, you can go a little early. They'll let you in. They'll let you in early. Get it while the getting's good in there. Kurtz Polaris, get everybody knocked off your Christmas list in one fell swoop. Kurtz Polaris on Saturday. If you missed anything in the show, you can check it out on the podcast. The podcast available wherever you get your podcast. Go listen to the podcast. At your leisure. That's the point of it. It's on your time. The podcast available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Also, we're releasing the second episode of the playoff version. Actually, I guess it's the third because we did 2 last week. But of the playoff version of FCS Speculators, a betting podcast. So you can go check that out. The 8 matchups against the spread in the FCS playoffs. We'll break them all down. We got a bunch of great guests for you on that thing, covering all kinds of teams all around the country. And so we'll bring that to you, and happy to have that up for you here very, very soon as well. You want to find us on Instagram at 1029ESPN on Instagram and Twitter. That's where you go for that, at Gus Tootell on Twitter, and at Skyline Sports MT as well for all your up-to-the-moment sports information. Congratulations to Ethan. Ethan won the tickets to the Grizz game on Friday, so he's going to take 3 of his closest friends and head over to see the Grizzlies at the Adams Center against North Dakota. Coming up this week, we're pumped up about this. We're going to have Southeastern Louisiana head coach Frank Selfo. This is a guy who's been in the coaching world, high school, college, NFL, his entire life. He's a lifer, but now just in his second year at Southeastern Louisiana, already has a playoff win to show for it. And, of course, Southeastern Louisiana headed for Missoula this weekend. So we will look forward to bringing you that interview. Also, Montana State running back Isaiah Ifanse going to join us. Isaiah obviously going for 171 yards on 21 carries. It's pretty efficient in the Cat Grizz game. Last Saturday, he got 10 carries for like 77 yards against UC Davis in his first real game back from injuries. Was out for most of the middle of this entire year, Isaiah Ifanse, but an outstanding sophomore running back. We also pumped up about this. Joe Moglia, who was the head coach of Coastal Carolina when the Chanticleers came to Missoula, won that playoff game in 2014 in the just devastating cold. And they come from South Carolina, of all places, and come up and win the football game. I think 42-35, I think, was the final of that thing. And obviously, Joe Moglia, in a former life, was the head of, I think, Ameriprise or Ameritrade, one of the financial investment firms, and a huge tycoon in that world. I just don't mean to use that disparagingly. Hugely successful TD Ameritrade. If you've heard of it, you have. And he was the guy who really kind of took that thing up to another level and then said, you know what? Football, what I'm into, and came back to the FCS to be a head coach. So we'll talk to him and bring that to you. It'll be fun. Also, Carolyn, chick who doesn't know sports, she's going to join us as well. Wanted to make mention of this here as we wrap up on a Wednesday afternoon, but the Missoula Paddleheads, along with the Billings Mustangs and the Great Falls Voyagers, 3 teams in the Pioneer League who are part of the MILB that are at risk of no longer existing, or at least no longer existing as part of a feeder system in the MILB to the MLB, as there was, again, you may remember this, all 30 owners, all 30 Major League Baseball owners signing a document that they said they were in favor of eliminating 42 minor league franchises across the country, part of a sort of streamlining process of minor league baseball going into Major League Baseball. And, for folks that, again, aren't necessarily totally clear on this, minor league baseball isn't just it is a feeder system to Major League Baseball, but it's its own entity. Okay, it is separate from Major League Baseball. Rob Manfred does not sit at the top of minor league baseball. They have their own commissioner, their own administrative structure, and then, yes, they have a relationship and a contractual agreement with Major League Baseball, but it's not part of Major League Baseball as such. And so when the owners at the Major League Baseball level sort of want to streamline and cut down the number of minor league baseball teams that there are, it's not so easy as just saying, okay, we're going to do this. And now there's a conversation, and I'm sure a debate and an argument that's being had between minor league baseball and Major League Baseball. Right now, Representative Lori Trahan, a Democrat from Massachusetts, and David McKinley, a Republican from West Virginia, have come together, to start a task force to stand up for minor league baseball to try and retain these teams. Obviously, these are teams that are more prominently from rural areas and maybe are the smallest of the small markets when it comes to baseball from a baseball perspective. And so they are the two folks who sort of sponsored this task force and a bill to retain these 42 franchises. All three of Montana's national congressional members, John Tester, Steve Daines, and Representative Gianforte, are all in promotion of this as well, which I guess makes sense when it's the three baseball teams in your state that are at risk of not being there. But what an interesting turn of events. I don't know, of course, what the outcome of this and what the task force can do and what congressional influence there might be with Major League Baseball to retain that. If there's some sort of financial ability to supplement in some way those teams. But what a deal, particularly in Missoula, with brand new ownership just a year into this thing, then all of the work to do a complete, not just name, but image overhaul from the absolute top down. I mean, it's easy to look at like hats and jerseys, but you're talking about, the website, the names on emails. I mean, you gotta change absolutely everything, the social medias and so forth and so on. So it's a ton of work. It's quite a lot of money, I have no doubt, to get all of that stuff done. And then within like 2 weeks of the release of the new stuff, they're saying, well, you know what, we might not have a team here at all. I mean, that is a pretty, I don't know, that's going to be a pretty discouraging thing to come out after all of the work that's been put into both the stadium and into, the updating, the changing of the names and the images and all of that. So it's something that we continue to look at. But the point is today that there's formally a task force which presumably is going to either draft a letter or a bill of some sort to try and keep the 42 franchises as they are. What I haven't heard yet, and what I will look for, we'll look for and try to bring to you, is the more specific details as to why. Like you can assume with hundreds and hundreds of minor league teams, dotted across the country, that if you think about these like corporate retailers or something, some stores don't do as well as others, and so it makes more sense within the model of the corporation or something to close those stores and improve efficiencies or whatever. I don't know if it's something like that, if it's you assume there's a financial aspect to it or what, but that is something that what the motivation would be for this, I think, would be very much worth knowing and trying to understand, and then you could maybe have a response or an answer to it. I also think it's worth noting in Montana in general, the minor league baseball systems here, I think, are really well supported. And I think in a lot of markets, there are not nearly as many attendees, as much money, as much, oversight put into and effort put into the success of the product on the field and the experience of the fans as they go to games as there is in the state of Montana. And certainly that's been a major focus for many years, and especially now, even more so recently in Missoula with new ownership taking over, but in Billings and Great Falls as well. I mean, that's something, there's a lot of teams that go to those games. Those are nice facilities that they use. It's not that way everywhere. There's a lot of places where there are some pretty tough spots to go play. We saw Helena kind of lose its team and end up in Colorado Springs. And if you've been to the Brewer Stadium, maybe it's not all that hard to see why you think maybe going someplace else might be a better option. But it is, it's an interesting time and space, and we'll continue to keep an eye on this story as we go. Tootell, Nuanez, ESPN Radio. Want to remind everybody, Saturday, you got football in Montana, right? Montana State and the Grizzlies both kicking off at 1 o'clock. we will be available at the tailgate party once again, Jason, to the walking bridge across from the Eastgate Shopping Center, and on the air with your pregame show Saturday, 11 a.m. We'll be on the air with that thing, so you can tune into 102.9 ESPN Radio and yourself ready for the Grizzlies and Lions and their FCS matchup. Boys and girls, thanks for being with us on this very fine Wednesday afternoon. Hope you have a great rest of your evening and night. We'll see you tomorrow. Tootell, Nuanez, ESPN Radio.